Well, if you've been paying attention to Epic Universe and all the news coming out, there has been a slew of it. We have lots of videos here on the channel talking about it, but one of the things that kind of slipped through the cracks was there was another episode of their Discover Universal podcast, as they've had lots of members from the creative team of Epic Universe come on to the show and give some really insights and just sort of behind the scenes of working on different aspects of Epic Universe, even many times releasing some tidbits of information that haven't been out there before. And if you can get through the cringiness of the podcast, because it is a little cringy, which is hopefully something I can help with here, of breaking it down, cutting it up where it's a little bit more digestible and giving some reaction to it. Hopefully that helps people do that. So that's what we're going to do today, is watch through this and give some reactions and thoughts to it. So hi, I'm Jared with Captures of Magic, and we will get right into this.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the studio. And we have our guest of the day today, Catherine. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Good.
We're so excited to have you here, but for others that may not know you, can you please just give a little introduction on yourself?
Sure. My name is Catherine DeGenova. I am the senior producer for Parkwide Entertainment for Epic from Universal Creative. So basically what that means is I'm responsible for the development and implementation of all of our entertainment for Epic, with my amazing team who are doing a great job right now getting it together.
You got like a couple of like entertainment offerings, and you said how many?
We have roughly 30 entertainment offerings in this park, which is amazing.
We almost fell out of our chairs.
I was like, what?
We're like, wait a minute.
Did you almost fall out of your chair? 30 is a lot. I'm curious to see what they're going to talk about, but that I'm assuming this includes meet and greets, the stage shows, different things like the musical acts that are sprinkled into the lands, that roaming around, things like that. But that is a lot more than I had initially ever heard them say. So 30 is a pretty big number.
Can you kind of describe like these entertainment offerings in an aspect, like as far as they range, like what are we expecting throughout this park?
I mean, I think the most successful entertainment programs in our parks has to have a diversity of program, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to have musicians and meet and greets and, dancers and different aspects of that. We have to meet the guest expectation of creating an epic entertainment program, right? So,
Literally.
yeah, so we do. So we have that, and every single land has its own kind of diverse program.
How is this kind of elevating the scale for us in terms of entertainment? I mean, even just hearing you off record before chatting, we're like,
I wish we had it recorded, because I was like, that was so like raw and like just perfect to hear.
I know. It was so good. So tell
I mean, it's not like you're sitting in a studio with microphones that you could just hit record. I'm just taking a guess here.
us, like, what can we expect in terms of just elevation, scale, grandeur? Like, what are we going to see there?
Well, we're leveraging a lot of new technology that's become available to us, right? So we want to create these immersive environments, and with that technology, we can create a lot of more authentic, realistic experiences for our guests, which I think is very cool. For the Wizarding World, kind of being able to bring some of the magic to the experiences in different ways. We don't want to just do what you expect when you come to see the theme parks, So we want to create something that feels authentic to these immersive worlds that we're creating, and so. That is what our goal was. That's what we've set out to do. That's what we're doing. So it will feel like the world that you have walked into.
The Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, just a brief overview. Again, there's a lot here. There's a lot in all of these areas, but what can we experience in terms of meet and greets, shows, immersiveness in general? What are we going to see there?
Obviously we have our two big live shows for the park, and one of them is in the Wizarding World, the Cirque Arcanu, which we'll talk about. But I think for the Wizarding World, we've actually created one of the most robust entertainment programs we've had to date for those lands. We're in Wizarding Paris. We're in Place Cachet, which is an international wizarding hub. So it has to feel like an international wizarding hub.
Of course.
We're familiar with the Beauxbatons students who come from France. So we have a Beauxbaton student with 2 international exchange students who are in the land from Hogwarts and Ilvermorny, and they are carrying with them the Monster Book of Monsters, which we've seen in iterations before, but have never seen it up close and never been able to open the book and interact with it. And so I'm so excited for those students, because it really is something that ties back not just to the Fantastic Beasts and Wizarding Paris, but also to the original, Harry Potter stories and where fans started with the franchise, right? So that's exciting. We obviously have the Ministry of Magic from London through the Metroflux, but we also have the entrance to the French Ministry of Magic in the Place de Furstenberg, which is where you see that kind of viney lift from the Fantastic Beasts films. And because so many people are trying to access the French Ministry, we must deploy an Auror to question folks as to why they're trying to enter the ministry.
I like that. That's cool.
So we have our French Ministry Auror who's going to be talking to guests and encouraging them through their journey to discover some of the hidden sights and sounds of Place Cachée.
So it's interesting when it comes to the Wizarding World in that you'll see a lot of the new lands in Epic Universe, meet and greets, roaming characters. You don't see that as much in the Wizarding World. You do have the train conductor or the guy that stands outside the train a lot of times in Hogsmeade that kind of talks to guests. But it's actually due to one of the things with J.K. Rowling is she did not want essentially like actors playing these characters that they know from the movies, as she wanted it to be when you're on these rides, that's when you interact and see these, the actual actors from the movies. So having roaming characters in here, or at least this one here, is kind of unique in that way with Wizarding World because it's not something we've had typically. We have had the musical acts that are in the Wizarding World, but not the actual, like anybody from the books or movies, for the most part, that are in the lands interacting with people. So I'm wondering if there's more than this or if that's going to be the only one. Because you look, again, the other lands have a lot of meet and greets and a lot of roaming characters and things, but because you're likely not to see many, or this could be the only one you see in the Ministry of Magic.
I think we've talked a bit in the past about Cosme Acajor, who is the wand maker of Paris. She's very different than Ollivander. Yep. She's fabulous, first of all. She's like the head of a Parisian fashion house.
Love that.
Yes. So Cosme is fantastic. And I think, one of the other exciting things we're doing is things we haven't delivered on in the past. So we are all familiar with the portraits in the Wizarding World who talk to each other, and in the films talk to Harry and Ron, Hermione, etc. So for the first time, our guests will be able to speak with portraits in this land.
Oh, that's really neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's and it enhances our wand program.
So are they going to talk back? I'm assuming that they're saying they're going to talk back. So this would be probably somebody. The way they could do this is you could be like Turtle Talk with Crush in Epcot, where you have someone hidden off with a microphone, or you could have a team member off to the side. They've done this before as well, where they have like an iPad that has pre-programmed responses, something like that. But the actual living portraits, that's something you've seen in the lines before. They just move. They don't really do much. You can't really interact with them. So that is interesting to hear.
As well, which we've had in the past, but I think elevating that in a different way here too.
You teased the show.
I did tease the show. Yes.
Tell us more about that, because again, that's one thing. Before recording, again, we had a big conversation before recording.
I'm probably gonna have the same reaction.
Oh yeah, we were both overwhelmed by the details of this. So tell us a little bit more about a teaser. Not too much, but enough.
Never too much. I think we were saying before we were recording, you wouldn't go see a movie if you knew how it ended. So there's only so much we should say. But Le Cirque Arcade is incredible. I, have had the pleasure of working on a lot of entertainment for our parks and resorts over the past many years, and I can truly say this is a gem among them. This is something we have never done before. Many of the elements that are in this show are elements we have not seen in any park, let alone our own, and it combines a lot of really incredible things. There's aerial performance, there's puppetry, there are, big pieces of set that change, and you get to go through the circus as you enter. And we were talking a little bit about, the fourth Harry Potter film, Goblet of Fire, and entering through something that becomes bigger as you walk through it. That was absolutely the inspiration for our queue, right? So going through the circus tents as they get larger and larger and larger until you're really in the main show. It is going to really change how you see theme park shows. I honestly believe and can say that with confidence, because we've been able to also deliver on the magic, deliver on the wizarding aspect of that show.
Yeah.
So
this whole land is full of magic.
I will say I've had some team members along the way that, whisper things to me here and there. And I've heard from a handful of them that all say that this show in the Wizarding World here is fantastic. Like, one of the people that I talked to said they're not even really into shows, and they thought it was really, really good. And if you're into the Fantastic Beasts, there's obviously lots of call outs to that. But and the effect of going into it, where it seems like it gets bigger from the movies, and like Doctor Who, if you think about that, they said that effect is really good. So I've heard very good things about this show. I've also heard very good things about the show that's in the Isle of Berk also. That one's based out of the one that's in Beijing. So I think the two headlining shows in the park, everything I'm hearing, sound pretty good.
This location, too, this is kind of like right in the middle. Like when you first walk into this area, you get to see that tent, and that kind of welcomes you to this whole world itself.
Yeah.
I am curious how, if when you go in there, I'm assuming maybe you go in and then the queue or waiting area is inside the first part of the tent. Because I've wondered about like the lines with this. As you look at the tent, it's like right in the middle, kind of when you get into the land. So I am curious how they do the line. I've wondered about that since seeing the initial concept art and things like that.
Yeah, it is a huge focal point in the land, which is very cool. I think, you know, even though it was a short part of the film, it was a really energetic, exciting, fun part of the film to see the facade and the beasts that were, you know, represented in that movie. We've recreated that facade. We know we're creating more to the circus than you even saw there. And I think expanding that world in that way is going to feel really new and different, I guess, and you know, you don't have to have seen all the films to understand what's going on. We created a story too.
That's going to be a very important aspect of this land, is because the main part of the land is based in 1920s Paris from the Fantastic Beasts movies. Those movies did not do very well. So Battle at the Ministry, which originally was supposed to be also based from the Fantastic Beasts, but given that the movie didn't do well, they then reverted it back to the 1990s Harry Potter with Harry, Ron, Hermione, those characters. So I think making this accessible, or real people will understand what's going on that haven't seen these movies, because I think there's a lot of people that are going to go in here that don't know a lot about the Fantastic Beasts or the lore from it. So I think that's a very important thing to basically admit almost and say, hey, you know, we understand not a lot of people are going to know this stuff, so we're making it very accessible. Kind of like, I mean, I've always said that about Pandora and Animal Kingdom with Disney World. Those movies, like Avatar movies, are successful. They make a bunch of money, but you don't have to know anything about Avatar to go enjoy those lands. Like the land is just well done to where you could know nothing about it and still enjoy it. So I imagine that's maybe the same route they've taken with this.
With this show that will connect, you know, it has very universal themes of compassion and a little bit of danger and a little bit of excitement and surprises. And so it's heartwarming by the end.
That's good. And that whole show itself it's brand new. So you guys, from the very beginning, the concept and everything, like kind of take us that process. Like we've had shows, which we'll get to, that has had some version of itself exist, but this doesn't exist anywhere. So where do you go from just kind of a blank canvas to the final product?
You know, I've been on a journey with this show for many years. I really had the pleasure to work in the early concept phases on it as well. And it was tough, right? It's tough at the gate to create something completely from scratch that resonates with the wizarding world, but also will resonate with guests that may not have, you know, are at different levels of deep diving into that. I think that from the get-go, we kind of looked at our metrics of we must deliver on circus, but we should deliver on Fantastic Beasts as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so through the various iterations of the show, we came to a place of creating that harmony and finding a way to kind of surprise the audience with how we're planning to do that. So
yeah, and that's so good, that surprise element. I mean, I feel like all of us grew up maybe going to the circus once or twice.
I love the circus.
Having that.
I have never liked the circus since I was a child, and I'm not scared of clowns. I just don't understand how they're supposed to be funny. As a child, I remember vividly going to the circus, not enjoying it, and a clown came up into the stands like looking for volunteers and pointed at me, and I think I was like 8 or 10, and I just adamantly was like, nope, not going. Like I was not going to go with this strange clown to go take part in the show. I'm not a big fan of circuses, personally speaking.
There's a resonation piece of, okay, it's a circus, but it's not just a circus. Like there's so much more to this.
It's a magical circus.
Yes.
It's a magical circus.
Anything can happen with magic. So that's exciting.
I think I have a new favorite now. My day's been shooken up.
I'm very biased, of course, but it is, I think it will really be a surprise for the park.
Yeah.
France is synonymous with street musicians, so we have to have street musicians. So we have a trio of musicians in Place Cachet that will come and have a bit of a wizarding musician twist, but they have a surprise, and that surprise is their fourth member, who's a puffskin named Plume. And if you're familiar with the puffskins, they are the predecessor to our pygmy puffs, the big purple and pink balls you see in our current lands. But so Plume the Puffskin is
those are probably the people we've seen in some of the aerial shots from BioReconstruct that have been practicing in the land near kind of toward the back of the land. So I guess that's where that would take place. But I would say that's probably the ones that we've seen, because I think I would remember seeing like 2 or 3 people. So that would make sense.
Part of our musician show, and we'll be able to, interact a little bit with the guests as well.
I can see a lot of fans who are going to love that. I know someone specifically close at heart who also loves Puffskins, so that'd be neat.
Plume is very cute.
Oh my gosh, we always have to have cute characters. I mean, always.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of got the big eyes and the the fur is very sweet and very musical type of beast too. So
that's neat. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I imagine it might be right next to a gift shop that's also selling plumes, if I were to guess. Smart move, but that's what I would guess.
Let's talk about Super Nintendo World.
Yes.
Who can we meet in this area?
Similar to our sister parks, Universal Studios Hollywood and Universal Studios Japan. You'll be able to meet Mario and Luigi, and of course, Princess Peach. And if you've seen anything from those parks, you could see how those characters are able to speak and interact with guests, which is really cool. We will also have Toad, and who doesn't love Toad? We also have Donkey Kong Country, and you have to meet Donkey Kong.
I'm honestly, that's the one I'm so stoked for.
The Donkey Kong meet and greet does look very good. He looks huge. And by the way, why is there no Bowser? I feel like a Bowser meet and greet would be one of the most popular ones. They have to do Bowser at some point. I just don't get it. Why would you not do Bowser?
Love Donkey Kong. He was one of my favorite growing up.
Yeah, he's very cool. So
I'm gonna be overwhelmed. We've only gotten not even halfway there, and I'm like, oh my.
I know.
This
we're
park
almost
is
there.
it's gonna be okay. This is my one usage of it. I get 3, but this park's gonna be epic.
it is.
I know it's like, oh, Brian, I
It
get
lives up
3
to its
times.
name, though, so
and
it's
it really is.
fair that
It
you
has
use that
to.
term.
This is the cringy stuff I was talking about.
Can't call a theme park Epic Universe and not make it epic. Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, an area that I know Brian is excited about.
I can't imagine what it is.
Brian.
Can anybody guess why? There's a reason why I'm here. It's just one area. Dark Universe.
Dark Universe.
That's all we get for Super Nintendo World? Just that? Although I don't believe there's going to be much entertainment in there outside of that. But I do wish they would do a Bowser, perhaps like Rosalina. And I've said before, I do wonder if Universal goes with some of the princesses from Nintendo, as there's a princess universe inside of Nintendo, and make their own sort of like princess meet and greets or princess realm that it's not going to be the same as Disney's, but you could have your own version of princesses. And also, given Nintendo's popularity, I think that would be probably pretty successful. But that's just, if they haven't thought of that, that's here. There you go. There's an idea.
An area full of monsters and villagers, and like an area that we just never actually have been able to experience fully in theme park history, basically. Like, this is going to be an area that we get to actually come face to face with the classic monsters and a bit of storyline that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
So what, as far as entertainment goes, what are we going to see lurking around the shadows in this world?
Well, I think you really alluded to it. With that land, we have to honor and, of course, deliver on the expectation of meeting the monsters and honoring the classics, but also telling a little bit of Darkmoor's story, right? So, of course, you can meet the Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, and the Invisible Man.
Wait, what?
How? How does this... Or maybe don't tell us so we can be surprised.
I guess you'll have to wait and see.
Let's see.
I'll ruin it for you because these pictures are already out there. The Invisible Man is like wrapped as he was in the movies with like sunglasses and things like that. The meet and greets look pretty cool, although I do think it would be kind of funny if they did have an Invisible Man meet and greet and you actually just stood next to nothing and they said that was the Invisible Man. Although I would get the joke, but I get why they probably didn't want to do that.
Maybe not.
All right,
maybe
keep
not.
your secrets over there then.
But just a fun, I think, character. You know, if you've ever seen the film, there's a lot of personality to the Invisible Man. And I think that that's, you know, in talking about entry points for our guests, like the bigger the personality, the more engaged they become. And I think the Invisible Man brings a lot of that into it. We also have a violinist in Darkmoor who tells kind of the history and folklore, which allows us to sort of bring in these classic stories from our Universal Legacy films into Darkmoor and make that connection there, which will be really lovely. And then the story of Darkmoor, we have the hounds, the kind of monster hunter type characters, with a very ragtag, bombastic group of individuals who will talk about their close calls with various different monsters and creatures. And Igor, who is Dr. Victoria Frankenstein's assistant.
Yeah. I love Igor.
And
I've heard that Igor is actually pretty cool from a couple of team members that have gone. I have heard that was like 2 of the people I talked to that was their favorite. But there's a ton of pictures of these meet and greets already out there that you can find on social media, as I think they lifted the embargo that they couldn't show stuff. But, you know, Universal is not really known for meet and greets overall. I mean, if you think of a meet and greets, like Disney has always done them, and, you know, princesses and Mickey and all the, you know, Mickey and Minnie, Donald Duck, all that stuff like that. So I think Epic Universe is definitely going to have a lot more focus on meet and greets in different types, which I, you know, like the voice ones, like with Super Nintendo World, and, you know, that we do know that there's some animatronic ones in Isle of Berk, things like that. So I think that this is going to bring an aspect to Universal that they haven't really had before. I mean, I've always loved the Transformers meet and greet, but I just love Transformers. But, you know, other than that, there hasn't been a ton. You know, they've had more and more, like DreamWorks Land has more of them now, but I think they're definitely developing more and trying to improve in that department.
Igor is a character obviously featured in our main ride for that land, but he's kind of got a lot of funny, interesting little comedy, and he's got quite a lot of different pieces, maybe pieces of people, monsters.
Oh, naturally.
Yeah, he's got some cool little things to play with and to show some guests of what he's discovered and found for her.
Yes.
So.
Who are these entertainment offerings for these characters? Is it something that's approachable to maybe a younger guest?
Definitely. Okay. You know, I think we think of Universal Monsters as scary, but there's a lot more dynamics to those stories. Yeah. There's a level of humanity.
So that's interesting because they've said before, some of the people that worked on Dark Universe, like, and I think Universal's even said it themselves, that Dark Universe is more of like a PG-13 land. So maybe, so what they're talking about here, like even children can do it. I'm wondering if more of like the land elements itself are more tame. Obviously, Monsters Unchained seems very intense and kind of scary from what some people have said. Very good things that people have said about that ride. So I am curious how they're going to do that with, how scary is the land itself? Are there certain areas, or does it change at night? Like stuff like that. From what she's saying, it's a little interesting because it goes against what Universal has said, at least previously, at least what we've understood about Dark Universe.
There and of friendliness, and curiosity for our guests that they're going to be able to bring. Obviously our musician kind of telling the stories allows for us to sort of understand the backstories of how we ended up in Darkmoor and how we ended up with these stories to begin with. Yeah. I do think it really strikes, the land itself strikes the honoring our history and also creating a new legacy, which is great.
And they roam around, this is like, it's a live area. This isn't just like, your typical, like you stand here and wait for them. No, they're moving around. So anybody gets a chance to really interact or engage with them or see them in their atmosphere.
Yeah.
I like the idea of roaming characters. That's something that Disneyland has always done very well. Disney World doesn't do it as much. And I think it's due to like people trying to stop the characters and get pictures and lines forming and things. I do like the idea of this. I'm hoping they can execute it where you just have roaming characters and, interacting with guests. I think that's always a cool thing to have. We've seen a lot of this type of entertainment be kind of stripped away from theme parks over the years. If you think about the Hollywood performers that were in Hollywood Studios, even seen it in Universal, not as many of these roaming characters, but I really hope they make more of a comeback and they're really part of Epic Universe, because I think it's a thing that you can add to a land in a theme park that it doesn't require you to like build a ride necessarily. It's just more of these characters that add immersion. So hopefully that's something that they not only have to start, but they like maintain it and it's always going on.
absolutely. I mean, that's part of the immersive worlds, right? Like we want it to feel lived in. We want these characters to feel like they exist in this world on a daily basis. And so that's absolutely the type of experience you have.
Well, let's talk about How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk. So same thing. Dive into the characters, the show. I know we have a really exciting show coming our way.
Definitely. You know, I think for Isle of Berk, it's about bringing the iconic characters to guests and creating the iconic moments. And I think when we first released the information for Isle of Berk, we talked about Hiccup and Toothless and sort of the moment with their hand and meeting Toothless, and guests having the opportunity to do that here. And my gosh, is Toothless just adorable?
I was gonna say, wait, hold on. Backtrack. We're getting to come face to face with Toothless.
He's not the only dragon that you'll come face to face with.
So I think these are for the most part, recorded very far in advance. They have released like footage or pictures of the Toothless meet and greet. It is semi-animatronic. Like they have somebody controlling it off to the side. I don't think they move around per se, like walking, but he does, like his head will move. They can control it. There's different interactive elements with the meet and greet, which again, I think is something that's very cool. And we have seen other animatronics that potentially could be part of meet and greets inside of Isle of Berk as well. But the Toothless one does look really good. Looks very almost just like the movie, really.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we're also excited to bring Stormfly and a few others to life as well.
Nice.
So
awesome.
And Stormfly, of course, accompanying Stormfly is Astrid, you know, who's just an incredible heroine and a great character, I think. You know, Rough Nut and Tough Nut, the silly twins.
I love their names.
Yes,
it's perfect.
They're hilarious in the films, and you know they'll be hilarious in our land. You know, Gobber. You know, Gobber has kind of that he's such an interesting and funny kind of larger than life character, and so we're finding ways of bringing that larger than life aspect, not just in his personality, but also in what he can do and how he can interact with guests. He has a forge in the land with Grump, his dragon. So there's dragons around every corner of that land. And of course, Untrainable, the Untrainable dragon, which we have a version of in Universal Beijing, and
beautiful, by the way.
Yes, incredible. I think I was fortunate enough to work on that land or that park, but that show, seeing it for the first time, it is really a new level of entertainment. And we always talk about Broadway caliber, but I think at this point, that's synonymous with what we do in our theme parks.
Yeah.
It has to be, right?
Yeah.
And Untrainable is 100% that. We see Toothless fly, and the story is so interesting and unique because we're telling a different story than the films. It's a new story, and it's very heartwarming and engaging. And there's the connection of the dragons, and you sort of feel that same emotion about Hiccup and Astrid and how they've come to build this relationship with the dragons, right? The flight, the music, it's very catchy.
You can go and see the full version of that show on YouTube. It's kind of all over the place, but it's a very well done show. Like the level of the show is probably what I'm not a Broadway expert, but it seems like it's that same caliber. And I don't know. I don't think it's the exact same copy as the one from Beijing, as I think the one in Beijing has a longer runtime, if I remember correctly, but it is a little different. But I think the major aspects of it they're bringing into Isle of Berk, and Isle of Berk's gonna have a ton of stuff to do because you got 3 rides, you got the kids play area, and then you're gonna have this show, and it is the largest land as of right now in Epic Universe, and I don't know about it after expansions, but so there's gonna be tons of things for kids and families to do in this land, and just people that like Vikings and dragons because those are pretty cool.
Have seen that one or no? You did say you get to see Toothless fly.
Yes.
We're not talking about like, oh, this is a screen like you get to see like on the film. We're talking about Toothless is flying overhead of the guests.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is such a cool moment.
How?
How do you
even do that?
Magic.
There's ways. There
Strings. It's a cool effect, but it's really not too crazy.
are ways. But having seen it in Beijing, seeing Toothless come out and fly through the clouds, it feels so real. So
I know. And I think the cool thing just about all of these entertainment offerings is whether it's inside of a theater or it's out in open air, you go in, you experience this, but then you leave and the story continues. It's not over.
It doesn't just stop in the building, which has great AC. That's a place I love going.
It's a valid point. I think these shows will be popular for the AC in the summer, which is another thing I like about Epic Universe is the shade and the trees, stuff like that. I think people will be very thankful for this, especially like after a couple of years of the tree growth in the park. I think you're going to have lots of natural shade, which I hope they never get rid of, because I think that's very appreciated when you're there in July and August, even September. It's hot, sweltering, if you will.
Sit, rest your feet, but you walk outside and you have even more of that story just to immerse yourself in, and I'm excited about that part.
Well, that makes this show unique, right? Yeah. In Beijing is a beautiful theater where the show is, but here you're still in Burke here, and then that creates sort of this like, all right, here we go. We're walking into the hall, and we're here in the Isle of Burke, and we're surrounded by Vikings and dragons, and all these different characters from the films, and here they are to tell us the story. So.
Well, how long are we expecting to enjoy the show? Like, we're roughly, I know we kind of talked about the one in Wizarding World, Ministry of Magic. Like, what are we looking at with this one here?
It's very similar, roughly, I'd say roughly 20 minutes, and I think similar to, like we said, with LeCirque Canoe.
Okay, speaking of Celestial Park, we had an amazing episode diving into the story, the details of this park, but not specifically the entertainment.
Yeah.
So what can we experience there?
So I think Celestial's cool because it's unique and new, right? Yes. And it's all its own thing. So we're bringing that storytelling into these characters. We're creating some lived-in Celestial type characters to meet and telling some of the stories of Celestial Park through that. So we have the Hemisphere Stage is a wonderful venue within Celestial Park. On that stage, we have these travelers who have been through the portals and brought back with them the sights and sounds of those portals. And
I like the idea of Celestial Park. Like I think I've said this before. I love like ancient civilizations, like lost technology, like the Epic Universe itself kind of has that lore to it, but Celestial Park as well. So I like the idea of these like celestial beings like doing things like that. So I'm curious to see what she says, but just the idea of itself, like a little Greek mythology thrown in there. I'm personally drawn a lot to Celestial Park. I'm very curious about this land.
And they've come together to sort of kind of create a musical moment using those sites and talking about what they've seen and experienced and seeing how dragons fly and seeing, monsters and,
That's awesome.
It's a good
really
teaser
cool.
for the worlds that everybody's about to get into as well, which is unique.
Yeah. And I think it ties back to the story of Celestial Park, right? Why are these portals there? Today's the day the portals have opened and, the Chronos is in alignment and alive with energy. And so we're keying off of that. We have one of our characters in the land is collecting sound to create energy in the land with the guests, which will be super interactive and very fun. Everybody kind of gets to participate in that and to create that energy for Celestial Park.
That's really unique.
That's interesting. Collecting sounds. I mean, it sounds like overall there's going to be lots of roaming characters and kind of like Doc Brown when he's in studio side doing things. Like I think a lot more of characters like that, which again, I think is a cool thing. I like hearing that.
Unique. I mean, the whole, Universal Epic Universe itself is a story being told from not just each of the worlds that you get to go through with the portals, but Celestial Park itself being that main entrance, the first draw that you have. And then we have, which I didn't know about, like we have our own unique characters itself, like explaining the story, which is so unique.
That's really cool.
I'm a big fan of lore. I love like story-driven things, so it gets me involved.
Yeah. It kind of gives you kind of context of like, why do we have Pizza Moon? Let's get into that. So I think that's very cool, and we're able to kind of create that moment for the guests.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
I do like the idea nothing is perhaps haphazard in there. Like everything has a lore behind it, which again, from somebody like growing up reading comics and being like into lots of stories, I think lore is really good to have and not just have a land that's just like, oh, it's just a center hub, like no big deal here. But I like the idea of like building the lore and having its own thing to it and then really building on that. And I think, again, this is what I always say is the difference between a theme park and an amusement park, is that amusement parks just are a bunch of things for you to do. There's no rhyme or reason to them. It's just more things to do. Whereas a theme park is supposed to tell you a story, bring you along, make you feel like you're living or part of that area. Well, I will say that was probably the cringiest one that they've done yet. But some tidbits of information in there, like the 30 entertainment offerings, the various roaming characters. At this point, a lot of these things we've kind of known about, but having a little bit more details, is always good. I am excited to see. I'm most curious, I suppose, of what we don't know yet is like Celestial Park, because I think Super Nintendo World is known, and Dark Universe we've known a lot about because we've seen those from team member previews. They're now sharing those. Isle of Berk, we've gotten some snippets of that, but I am curious. You didn't mention this, but like the dragons, like do the flying dragons play a part in anything? Or they just like when do they go up? Or is there music? Like do they draw attention to it? Different stuff like that. Some of the, like I said, we've seen some of these animatronics being tested. Is that part of the show, or is that actually part of meet and greets outside of the Toothless one and things like that? So there are some questions there, but Celestial Park is the one I think it has the most potential to be the most different because, again, it's just a central part of the land. It has its own story. The other lands are getting most of the attention. So I feel like it gives them flexibility to really tell more of a story, have more lore, have more interactive characters, as I think it would be a welcome thing in that area. Also something to draw people into that area, like if they're worried about overcrowding, like in the portals themselves, like, coming to capacity, having things for people to do in the center area of there, I think is a good idea. Could be, again, you could get very creative with the idea of these celestials and these, Greek gods and all this ancient technology. All this stuff to me sounds really good. So you could get very creative with it. I was hoping to hear more about the fireworks show and the fountain show. Still nothing from Universal on that. I thought we might hear a tidbit about that. We do know the fountain is working and they are testing it. We've seen fireworks being tested, but so far we haven't heard any details about, the nightly show. What's it going to be called? What kind of, soundtracks with it? Is the fountain play part of it? How often during the day is a fountain show going on? Stuff like that I'm curious about. So I think there's still things yet that Universal has said, and maybe they don't say before they open. I would assume they would, especially like about a fireworks show and things like that. But it seems like a lot of this perhaps are keeping close to the vest. But these, again, I'm pretty sure these were recorded months ago and they're just now releasing them. So this could be stuff that they just didn't want to put into the show at that point. But hopefully we hear more about that. And there may be some stuff. I mean, she said 30. They didn't go through 30 things. So there's still some things in there that she wasn't going through that are going to be part of this, which I'm assuming that is including just roaming characters, musical shows that are happening throughout there. But I'm wondering if the majority of those may be in Celestial Park, as, again, you just have a lot more opportunity just to throw characters in there, see what, if a character becomes popular, that you could just throw different things in there. So you have a lot of flexibility in that land just because it's not tied to an IP necessarily. But I like the idea of like Pizza Moon has lore. Like all that sounds pretty cool. And the rides and things we've known have some of that lore as well. So we'll learn a little bit more about the entertainment. I'm assuming, I know I said this last time, I'm assuming this is the last one perhaps they do. I don't know what else they would really go in here and talk about unless they have a special one about the nighttime show or some other entertainment offerings, but they've had one about just about every aspect that I can think of that they would talk about, but then I will say that, and probably tomorrow they'll have a new episode on something else. So I don't know. They are definitely winding down. We are just a few months away from the park opening. But again, these are not the easiest to listen to, if I'm being quite honest. They're very scripted, very cringy podcast, but I cut this down so you can just get the good tidbits of information. You don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to, and get a little bit more info for those that are excited about Epic Universes. I think that's exactly who these podcasts are for. But either way, that's gonna be it though for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what entertainment offering at Epic Universe are you most looking forward to, or do you not care about entertainment offerings? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.